Hello, everybody. This is Neil with Portal to Ascension. Just doing a quick check real quick, make sure we're live. Yes, we are. Welcome, everybody. This is Neil. Hope you're all doing incredibly today. I'm excited to have you back for the second part of this series where we're going deep into deciphering UFO disclosure, what's been going on in the disclosure movement, right? And so the last one, we actually went, what did we do last time? We did the history of UFOs. So my presentation 2 days ago, for any of you guys who didn't check it out, it's on youtube.com/portal to ascension, and it was called From UFOs to UAPs, and that was the history around 100 years from 1860 is when we started with some of the UFO cases in the late 1800s all the way up until this present moment, just kind of going deeper into what is this phenomena, how did it become so popular, and the ultimate question is, why was it ridiculed for so long? And then why is it no longer ridiculed at all, right? Or I guess some people still ridicule it, but why is it now accepted by the mainstream in regards to coming out with all this information? And Alan, we can see you, so if you want to switch your camera off.
Getting dressed, how embarrassing.
Well, only the people in the room, no one else could see you on YouTube.
That's okay, that's okay.
Welcome to my guest, Alan Steinfeld. Hey, brother.
Hey, no, this is like such a turning point in history that we're at now. I think it's so important to review all the documents, everything that's led up to this moment, because it's cascading into a whole new reality. So yes.
Yeah. And that's what we want to look at today is like, okay, so what we're going to do today is I'm just going to finish off last week's presentation, which is only like 5 minutes because we had to end it early, which just goes into showing what is going on right now. Some of the articles, the interview with David Grush. Some of you on YouTube and in the room, Zoom room told me last week, or 2 days ago actually, that you had no idea what was going on with this. So before we get into going deeper into the UFO documents and what does it mean, you know, I've read quite a few declassified documents where my mind was literally blown. I'm like, what on earth? Like the information out there, what they're just putting in plain sight. And it's also plausible deniability. You know, if people go, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell us? Well, in 2003, we released this document and it talks about remote viewing Mars and ETs on Mars. It's all out there. And what is relied on is the fact that not a lot of us do our own research. And many of us are so caught up in this rat race, we don't have time to really look at all the other things and do a little deep dive and type in the right thing in Google to find out. So that's what we're going to be bringing forth today, is some of that information. But before we do that, let's build up some energy in the room. I'd love for you guys on YouTube just to check in, say hi. I'm going to read some comments if you guys are commenting there. And everybody in the chat room, we have an intimate group in Zoom today. And if you guys want to just check in, say hello, let us know where you're from in the chat room. And let's just build up the energy for what we're going to be doing. What I would love to do is, after we're done with the documents today, if any of you guys want to share what you're feeling and what your thoughts are on this, that'll be great. Whether you do it within the chat, but if you want to, you can actually come on audio or come on Zoom or come on the video as well and share whatever you have to say, because I want to do this like a discussion, because I'm having a debate in my own head with my friends about this. I would love to know what you guys think about all of this as well. So we have Beth from Charlotte. Hello. Michael from Michigan. Marilyn from Michigan as well. We have Albuquerque in the house. Carol, welcome, guys. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And Julia from Connecticut, thank you so much for being here. So starting off here, so the flow today, so Alan is my guest, and I'm going to just spend the next 5 minutes finishing off last week's presentation, and then we're going to start out with Alan, and he's going to be showing some of his documents, and we're going to be discussing that. So last week, I spoke about, 2 days ago, keep things last week, spoke about compartmentalization. Congress versus the Department of Defense versus the military complex. And what seems to occur is that a lot of times the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. And by compartmentalization, not only has it allowed for specific SAP, secret access programs, special access programs, to kind of run in black budget money and not be checked by Congress or have any oversight, but a lot of individuals that stay in power because they don't get voted out of office after 4 years have had the ability to be behind a lot of these programs and gain a power that even some of the presidents and other elected officials don't even get insight to. So compartmentalization is what's going on. And it's important to note that because not everybody has an agenda that might be malicious. A lot of individuals within these intelligence offices and Congress and everything like that are as completely clueless, right? And are literally trying to figure out what it is. However, a lot of them, because based on the military background, start immediately thinking, well, what is this in our night sky? Is it a foreign adversary? What do we do? What can we do to protect ourselves? So just because they say they want to protect us and that they think it's a threat doesn't always mean that they're part of some malicious agenda. It's based on their upbringing, their background, their politics, all of that. And then there are those that are literally trying to seem to demonize what is going on out there. That's my personal take on it. So here we go. Here's the article, the debrief, which was the next phase of this disclosure movement, in which David Grush had come out and spoke about the UFO crash retrieval team. And you can see here a lot of individuals, a lot of soldiers, military individuals, people from the Army, the US Navy have been coming out over the last year or so disclosing information. And part of this is because there was the Whistleblower Act that was passed, I think just a few months ago, that gave them protections under the government that they were allowed to come out and report sightings and any other things that have to do with UAPs. So even though they were given oversight by Congress, they were able to disclose information as per Congress. It seems like David Grush has been saying is that a lot of individuals actually within these departments are still being held accountable for coming out with this information, and there still is a culture of maybe them losing their jobs or being threatened, something else going on behind the scenes, even though technically whistleblowers are supposed to be able to release this information at this point. And then we had the House Oversight Plans UFO hearing after unconfirmed claims of crashed alien spacecraft. So that's where we are now. The House is going to be having a UFO hearing pretty soon on these UFO crash retrieval teams. And they've had a few hearings in the last year or so, but I personally feel like nothing has really come out of it. What do you think, Alan, about those past hearings?
We're making progress. It's very, very slow and painful in a way, but we just want them to come out and say, look, guess what? There's UFOs here. We've had crash retrieval, we have bodies, and that's what Gersh said. Yeah. But to get the that out to the public in a way that's acknowledged, there's so much resistance, and there's actually a revolution inside the government. There's a subtle kind of battle going on, and one side says one thing, the other side says the exact opposite. So we're at a turning point. I do think something's about the wall in the dam is cracking. It is cracking.
Right. And there was an article that came out 2 days ago about there being that an insider is saying that there is actually a kind of a battle behind closed doors of who's going to be releasing the truth of extraterrestrial life.
Mm-hmm. Well, they've already released it. Gersh already said, guess what?
But then the government, those are the whistleblowers, but then the actual governments or the shadow governments that are connected to these bodies and the crash retrievals, are they going to come out and admit that they have it?
Yeah, well, they'll have to at some point, but right now it's resistance, and then suddenly, oh, get by the way. It's governments are like that. It's not about aliens, it's about power. I don't think they care if we know there's aliens or not, but it's really about control over the narrative, and it's manipulation of reality. It's like the church saying, that's an old cliche, but the church says, no, the earth is the center of creation, and you're going to be put in jail if you say anything else. And unfortunately, we are at that same point, that's what I think.
Definitely. All right, go ahead.
Oh, the other thing you didn't mention was the Gary Nolan video. Did you talk about Gary Nolan?
No. You want to go ahead and talk about that?
Well, it's a video. Do you want me to show it, or you
show it. Let me show these 3 articles and let's start with that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So just to get you guys up to speed, because there were some people that weren't following this. This has been dripping out for quite some time, and even the UFO crash retrieval video that I'm going to show you right now before Alan shows you the Gary video is. There was actually smaller articles on not so mainstream news stations or news websites, but still mainstream enough to not be like in the alternative world as we are, like extremely alternative, that have been talking about the UFO crash retrievals for the last few months. So there's been just dripping of this information coming out, but it seems like we really hit a milestone in this new whistleblower. You can see here's another article. Aliens have been on Earth for a long time and still here, Stanford University professor claims. And that is Gary Nolan, the video we're going to see in just a few moments. And then the ocean expedition I showed you guys last time, check that video out, of Evie Loeb and doing an ocean expedition in the Pacific. And they actually found some anomalies in the meteorite because they believed that the meteorite that had come had specific anomalies to it, that it might have actually come from another solar system or been a probe from an alien species. So they're actually in real time right now, just the first extraction of the meteorite and content from it was taken out 3 days ago. So they're in the depths of this. It seems that we're on the precipice. We're at the edge of something great, and all these different things are happening from multiple angles. And when we get to the end of my presentation today, I'm going to show you how our reach out there for extraterrestrial life and our ability to read radio signals has actually completely shifted to an exponential level because of AI. So, and they've already deciphered 4 signals that are anomalous coming from different planets that have similar suns to our own, right? And I'm going to show you that. So it's right now we're having a complete quantum leap in our evolution and our shift in consciousness. So, all right, let me go ahead and show you guys this video for those of you who haven't seen it. And this is the video that came out about, I think it was just over a week ago now, almost 2 weeks, in which the UFO crash retrieval program was broadcasted to the masses like it has never been before.
Last week, NASA held its first public meeting on UFOs, which, by the way, are now called officially unidentified aerial phenomena. This is a year after launching a study into unexplained sightings. And now tonight, a worldwide TV exclusive you will only see right here on News Nation. Bombshell claims from a military whistleblower published just this morning, alleging a secret UFO retrieval program within the U.S. government. David Grush, an Air Force veteran, former member of that task force, and veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, now formally blowing the whistle on secrets he says no one has ever shared publicly before. He is speaking one-on-one with investigative reporter Ross Coldhart, reporting for News Nation.
When you say crash retrieval, what do you mean?
These are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft if you will. It's probably not the right parlance, but no kidding, non-human, exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number.
All right, tune into Vargas tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern, a worldwide TV.
So that was just a short version of it. There was a longer video as well. But as Alan said, the actual full interview is available. And where can people find that, Alan? Is it on YouTube?
You go to News Nation. That's really it's the channel that broke the whole thing open. So yeah, that non-human is the key here. Technical vehicles, call them spacecraft. The US has that. That's disclosure, Neil. That's right there. Just said it right on the OMID. So I don't know why the news is not all over it. It was a little bit, but it just should be. But before that, Gary Nolan kind of previewed this. Can I show the Gary Nolan thing?
Yeah,
right
go
here?
ahead. Yep.
Do I have screen sharing properly?
So the question is also, did the mainstream news, the videos that they released, were they actually reverse engineered craft like a few people have said? And maybe when it comes to the actual disclosure of extraterrestrial life, they're a little more hesitant to release that information.
Well, wait, I don't understand the difference. Yeah, they
because the Nimitz encounter and the gimbal and all that, many whistleblowers have actually said that those were actually reverse engineered government craft, that they're actually our craft. And so when it comes to showing us the craft on the mainstream news, maybe they're actually just showing us the stuff that is actually owned by humans. But when it comes to going the next level and talking about who are these beings and where do they come from, that is something they're not actually broadcasting.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all kind of mixed together. It's public denial. But before Gersh came forward, Gary Nolan, May 19th, that was about 3 weeks before the debrief disclosure on June 5th. Gary Nolan was at the SALT talks, which is a high end. You have to pay $25,000 to come to these talks. And he was at this talk. And it was the only talk about UFOs. The rest was about economy and all that. But Gary Nolan was asked here.
I'm curious, do you believe that extraterrestrial intelligence has visited planet Earth?
I think you can go a step further. It hasn't just visited, it's been here a long time and it's still here. And it has basically, you know, people talk about the wow signal, looking for extraterrestrial intelligence. The wow signal is that people see it on an almost regular basis. That's the communication that's already here.
How do you like that, Neil?
I'm curious.
Neil,
Yeah, that's incredible.
did you ever hear that before? Yeah.
I've heard about the wow signal. Grant Cameron talks about that a lot, but I didn't hear Gary say this. No.
And then this
I
is
saw the articles because they did articles about this. I didn't see the video.
and this is what broke it open. So he says that, and then he says this.
And that statement seems so incredible that it's tough to believe. Right?
So the interviewer is just blown away. He says it's so incredible.
Right.
It's tough to, he's not integrating this. This guy's representative of how the public will react to all this.
Yeah.
And that statement seems so incredible that it's tough to believe, right? Like, people hear that, and maybe a lot of people hear that, and they don't believe it. And so I'm curious, if you had to assign a probability to that statement, that you believe extraterrestrial intelligence has visited this planet, what probability would you assign?
What probability do you think he says, Neil?
100.
Well, that is the correct answer.
99.9.
100%.
There we go.
And that's not just my opinion.
At 100%.
I mean, look,
It's no
and
longer,
that's not just my
when something's 100%, it's no longer a probability.
There's no doubt. Yeah.
And that statement seems so
Okay, let me just.
incredible. If you had to assign a probability to that statement, that you believe extraterrestrial intelligence has visited this planet, what probability would you assign?
100%. And that's not just my opinion.
He's like mind
I
blown.
mean, look, the National Defense Appropriation Act passed last year, signed by Biden in December. 30 pages of that is the establishment of an unidentified aerial phenomenon office, the establishment of looking into the harm that's happened to any of a number of the individuals, going back to 1945 and looking at the disinformation and misinformation that has been basically articulated over the decades. 12 US senators have signed on to a document that basically says we want the information. The establishment of an office, ARROW, in the Department of Defense, has 25 people working in it right now. And what's their goal? Collecting the information across all of the U.S. Department of Defense intelligence offices, and collation of that into a uniform format for the very first time, and provision of that then to Congress, the creation of a whistleblowers program specifically that allows people from within, who I'm going to say this, who've been working on the reverse engineering programs, reverse engineering of objects, so that they can come in and break their oaths, but it's specifically just to talk to Congress and give that information in classified settings. And that the most recent one that happened was just last weekend, and it created quite a hornet's nest in Washington.
So that hornet's nest was the deposition of Gersh that Nolan was privy to. This is my theory. I talked to Richard, Dolan, and Linda about this, and they go, well, you might be right, but I think that's what he was hinting. He was foreshadowing the Gersh whistleblower that was just brought into law by the Biden administration, signed into law. You cannot prosecute whistleblowers if they're talking about UAPs, UFOs.
Yeah. What conference was this?
This was the SALT conference. This was the New York City high end. I have one more tape.
What is the SALT conference? It wasn't on UFOs then, or the conference?
It wasn't on UFOs. It was on economy, economic, all this stuff. But
Yeah.
but he was a special guest, and I think he has one more bomb he's dropping here.
Dr. Nolan, You have to speculate. What do you think it is? Let's be bold.
I think it
Is this a video or audio?
intelligence.
Oh, do you see the audio here?
We just heard the audio, no video.
Oh, you don't hear the audio? Oh, wait, it
No.
says screen has been paused.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a pretty amazing thing. I have just this last part. I mean, right? That blows the whole thing wide
Right,
open.
right.
So before Gersh even appeared, Nolan was hinting and actually spilling the beans in a way that was
Yeah.
most appropriate.
First, is his name Gersh or Grush? David Grush, right?
Maybe it's Grush.
It's Grush,
Yeah.
okay, cool. So, it's interesting. You show the video, then I'll
No,
I'll
no.
come back.
Let me just go here. Do you see that one there?
Yeah, we see it.
Because this, I think, really, this part comes to what we're trying to talk about here. Wait, let me just,
Something that we don't understand that is
do you see this?
Dr. Nolan,
Yeah.
you have to speculate. What do you
Right.
think it is? Let's be bold.
I think it is an advanced form of intelligence, something that we don't understand, that is using some kind of intermediaries, however it is, like I said about the, you're not going to end up in the middle of the tribe, the angry monkeys that are flinging muck at each other or nuclear bombs. You're not going to show yourself in the middle of the angry. You're going to send intermediaries. Something there that is, I think of it as an intelligence test. Can you see what's in front of you for what it really is? Yeah. Can you see the anomalous data point that is there that you realize what it is? I mean, when the
That's so important. That is real insight. Can you see the anomalous? Can you forget everything you're projecting onto the unknown and look at it for what it is? And we don't want to call it anomalous. We want to investigate with the best minds we have what is in our skies. If you keep keeping it secret, there's no progress. And that's sort of where the government wants to keep us, unprogressed and ignorant. That's real ignorance. Ignorance means lack of knowledge. So that's where, and so he finishes up here with this.
American native tribes first saw the Spanish ships coming across the horizon.
You know, that whole thing when the natives saw, they couldn't see what it is because they didn't have enough knowledge. So we can't see what's out there because we don't have enough knowledge to cognize that reality.
Didn't realize what it was. They couldn't see it for what it was.
Like
so, this is, as I said before, this is the kind of the wow factor. That they're showing up, they're saying, well, who amongst you are intelligent enough to realize what it is that you're looking at? If you and I can agree that the data is real, irrespective of what the potential conclusions might be, the hypotheses, then the onus is no longer on me to come up with an answer. Now it's also on you, because we're having a discussion about
love this.
So it's believe the data, not the conclusion.
Right, because you know what? We're not sophisticated enough to even have a conclusion about what's out there. So all we can do right now in this really early stage of contact, because is just collect the data points. What do they look like? What are people's experiences? We have to look at the patterns that are showing up and
investigate it.
What you investigate, exactly. And you can't make a conclusion until it's investigated. So like people who are claiming to be from this planet, that planet, that's great, but that doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is establishing the fact that this is a real legitimate phenomena from somewhere else involving non-humans. And that's not the issue here. The issue is the government is denying everything.
Right.
So,
and real investigation too, because like in the 50s, for example, University of Colorado's investigation, they concluded that the UFOs were not a threat, and then they closed down the investigations. They didn't say that they're not real. So it's like what happens at that point is maybe they continue investigating, but don't disclose information to us.
Right. But then we get ARROW, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and they come out with this statement. Let me just show you this statement that they're coming out with, because this is the very embarrassing. The more they deny the truth, the worse they look. This is Sean Kirkpatrick, the head of the ARROW organization inside the government, who's been hired to investigate UFOs. And he says, where's this? He says,
I should also state clearly for the record that in our research, AARO has found no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity, off-world technology, or objects that defy the known laws of physics. In the event sufficient scientific data were ever obtained that a UAP encountered can only be explained by extraterrestrial origin, we are committed to working with our interagency partners at NASA to appropriately inform U.S. government's leadership of its findings. For those few cases that have leaked to the public previously and subsequently commented on by the U.S. government, I encourage those who hold alternative theories or views to submit your research to credible peer-reviewed scientific journals.
That is such a cop-out. That is such an obvious lie. That guy, I think he knows he's lying. I mean,
oh yeah, I mean they've admitted, so many people have said that these whatever they are defying the laws of physics, right? All the examples of them going faster than the speed of sound in a split second.
yeah. I mean, Luis Elizondo talks about 6 observables, acceleration with no means of no building up. But if you're going from 0 to 60, you're going to go 10, 20, 30 miles until you get to 60. With these craft, it's like 0 to 10,000 miles in a second. Yep. There's no that if this guy says there's no evidence of extraterrestrial vehicles, then you tell me who's creating that technology. Right. I mean, so the more the government agencies lie, the deeper they are sticking their foot in their mouth, and it's going to be so deep they're choking on their own foot, because there's no way they're going to come able to save face. So they have to. It is so embarrassing that they are saying what would constitute evidence of extraterrestrial vehicles. Well, the 6 observables that Luis Elizondo had pointed out, you look up 6 observables, and one of them is its effect on human neurology and physiology. This I can find that out. There's one other part that well, this is the thing that yeah, anyway, we went over that. There's one other element that I think they're keeping quiet, which is the extraterrestrial element. And I did this interview with John Ramirez. You know who John Ramirez is?
No, I don't.
He's a former CIA guy. He was at Contact in the Desert, and he gave me this interview coming from, before they wrote it into law, they did this sort of speculation.
Okay. And so first of all, in the IAA, UAPs are now defined to be
The IAA is the Intelligence Authorization Act. That was what was coming into law. They changed it, but in the original document, it talked about trans-medium vehicles.
It's medium. So now, and they're now calling it unidentified aerospace undersea phenomenon. So another new term for it, and there's probably another acronym for it that will be forthcoming. Okay, so it recognizes those domains of space, atmosphere, and water in the legislation. Not only that, they also recognize that they operate in domains other than space, other than our atmosphere, and other than in our seas. So if it's not operating in any of those 3 domains, where else could it be operating? If it's not in space, if it's not on the earth, in the water, in our air, I think that opens up that area called the interdimensional hypothesis, that they may be coming to us not only extraterrestrially, but interdimensionally.
That's an ex-CIA officer saying that. And so that is a major. And then Gersh himself talks about the interdimensional hypothesis. So the interdimensional hypothesis is really replacing the extraterrestrial hypothesis. This is something.
Right. Well, it depends what you, because ever since I found out about ETs, I always thought they're interdimensional. It's kind of interchangeable, right? Because the only way you're going to get here is traveling interdimensionally.
Yeah, I mean,
Even if you're coming from another place in space, if you bend space-time just to come here, technically you're traveling through dimensions.
Right, it's true. But where do they live, these beings? Do they live in another realm? Or are they just using another realm as a medium? I think some of them are 3D, some of them are beyond 3D. And this is exact. this is something that here's Jacques Vallée and J. Allen Hynek talking about the beginnings of the interdimensional hypothesis, when there's missing time, sudden disappearance, distortion of reality, out-of-body recall, frozen in time, loss of memory, going through walls, and quadrupole light. I can get into quadrupole light another time, but Gersh himself, the guy you just talked about, also mentions this interdimensional hypothesis, and here it is.
Even if you call them NHI and UAP, how could such NHI travel to Earth in the first place and go undetected by the general public? Grush says the craft may not be travelling through space as we understand it.
It is a well-established fact, at least mathematically and based on empirical observation and analysis, that there most likely are physical additional spatial dimensions. And you could imagine in 4 and 5D space where what we experience as linear time ends up being a physical dimension in higher dimensional space, where if you were living there, you could translate across what we perceive as a linear flow. So there is a possibility that, and this is a theory here, I'm not saying this is 100% the case, but it could be that this is not necessarily extraterrestrial, and it's actually coming from a higher dimensional physical space that might be co-located, right here.
Right. So that goes along with what you're saying.
That's an incredible video, because one of the number one things that I've heard from people, including my own father, right, when he knew what I was doing, was that how ETs can't visit us because of the limitation of the speed of light, right? And for me telling him, well, you can go through dimensions, is just me as a spiritual individual telling him that. But now the actual whistleblowers and things coming from the mainstream are providing different solutions for them to be able to get here. I feel that's going to help shift a lot of people's consciousness.
Exactly. And this is what the quantum physics world is all about. The quantum physics is talking about how that is a dimensional issue. I mean, I just heard a description of quantum computing that sounded a lot like what the ETs are doing. Can I just show you another document and then you'll take over?
Go for it.
All right, here.
Well, do you have documents, or are you showing articles?
I do actually have documents.
Yeah, show whatever you want.
Okay, let me just show you this one document here.
Well, here's a question for you real quick, though. If we have, you said 3D ETs, right? If there are third dimensional beings that are like kind of in the same thing as us, maybe need to be in a Goldilocks zone because we're a victim to the climates and all that stuff, how would they get here from so far away? Wouldn't they even harness quantum reality to bend space-time and arrive here? So technically,
I do think that's a good point. I do think they are maybe using quantum realities or a fourth hyperdimensional, but they're not they're just using as if like quantum tunneling through to us. So I don't know, does this document show up pretty good?
Yeah, we see it. Oh, we can't read it. We see it.
This is July 8th, 1947.
Okay.
And I'll just, here, I'll highlighted some of this here. July 8th, 1947. This is, I wrote out what is said here. The writer of this little expedition, that anything of import will be accomplished by this gesture. This is July 8th, 1947. This is like a few days after Roswell. This I've written in red what's actually in this document because it's hard to read. The mere fact that, the mere fact that the data herein was attained by so-called paranormal means is probably sufficient to ensure its disregard by normally all persons addressed. Nevertheless, it seems to be public duty to make it available. A very serious situation may develop at any time with regard to the flying saucers. If one of those should be attacked, the attacking plane will almost certainly be destroyed. In the public's mind, this might create near panic and international suspicion. The principal data concerning these crafts is now in hand, must be offered no matter how fantastic and unintentional it may seem to minds not previously instructed in thinking of this type. So way before Roswell, the government was aware you don't want to shoot down an ET craft because it will react. Except, you know what brought down the craft in Roswell was the radar, the new radar systems, I think. That's really what brought them down. Okay. This is also in the document. These are not excarnate Earth people, but come from their own world, 1947. They do not come from any planet as we use the word, but an etheric planet, which interpenetrates with our own and is not perceptible by us. That means interdimensional. The bodies of the visitors and the craft also automatically materialize in entering the vibratory rate of our dense matter. That's pretty good.
Well, this is 47, huh?
This is
Wow. This is some
1947.
esoteric information here.
I know it's very esoteric, and it's I don't know who wrote this. There's no signature on there, but the region, they use some Hindu mythologies. It's not the astral plane, but corresponds to the locus and the talus as students of Hinduism. You know, the Puranas talk about these levels of dimension.
Well, do you think that what do you call it? Nuclear energy had something to do with this time as well, 1945, 1947?
Oh yeah, of course. They were reacting to the nuclear, you know, like
Testing.
you said, and other people said, a nuclear bomb rips holes in time and space, and that's disturbing.
Well, before you go on, it's so interesting because Oppenheimer was influenced by the Mahabharata, and he even quoted the Mahabharata for when he created the nuclear weapon. He believed that there was nuclear war in the Mahabharata, and they're actually doing a reference to the Hindu text here as well.
I know. So they took a lot of the esoteric literature and references to the Hindu text. And so there's one more document I want to show. So that talked about the interdimensional qualities to that. There's one more document that people can look up called the Guy Huddle Memo. You know, Guy Huddle was an FBI agent. Huddle. Let me just put this in there.
Okay, we need you to share the screen though. We don't see that.
Oh, you don't see it? Okay, let me just put
we
this
just
up.
see your PowerPoint.
Okay, there we go. I'm just going to put this up right now. Share screen. All right, this document is even more far out. 1950. Do you see it? March 22nd, 1950. To director of the FBI, Guy Huddle, Washington. This was in the FBI files, and the only reason I heard about this document is because the FBI was complaining that people were looking at this document more than any others, and they weren't looking at all the great crimes they solved. That was on the news. They were not looking at the crimes, they were looking at this document. And so it says, investigator for the Air Force stated that 3 so-called flying saucers had been recovered in New Mexico. This is probably not Roswell. It's probably the other, what was that? The Aztec crash. They were described, do you see that, as being circular in shape with raised centers, approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape, but only 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of very fine texture. Each body was, I think, bandaged in a manner similar to blackout suits used by speed flyers, high altitude speed flyers. According to blank lieutenant, the sources were found in New Mexico due to the fact that the government was using very high-powered radar setup in that area, and it believed that the radar interfered with the controlling mechanics of the saucer. I think this is the same theory that Jacques Vallée and Paula Harris talked about the Trinity craft. It's because they were using these high-powered radars, and that it just kind of disrupted the technology in these UFO vehicles. They weren't ready for our advance. So
the question is, like, were those vehicles of lower dimensional beings because they had craft that could actually be affected by radar? Because then there's the other ones that, you know, like Stephen Greer said, and quite a few others, that by 1954 we had reverse engineered the technology to take down craft as actually utilizing an actual weapon to do so.
Right, and there's also something else in the literature called UFO baiting.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to switch your camera on, or are you keeping it off?
What's that?
You want to switch your camera on?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. UFO baiting
Mhm.
It's another thing that have you heard of that term, baiting?
No, tell me.
That's when we get, it seems like, according to the research of Gary Nolan again, Kit Green, that people who've experienced UFOs are attracting UFOs. So baiting is when you get a lot of people who've had UFO contact together to kind of call in the UFOs because they
Very
seem
interesting.
here. So
Okay.
that's another thing. This is very sophisticated. This is deep. The government's been looking at this for a very long time, and to say, hey, we have no idea what's going on. They're protecting themselves. They're protecting corporate interests, because I think it really comes down to money. They're selling the reverse engineering technology to industry, and
Mhm.
someone's getting a kickback. And, that's illegal for many reasons. First of all, they're not telling Congress, but they're making money off what the US citizens
Yeah.
are paying the military, and someone's selling out from the military to private corporations, and the American people, us, are owed that money, not corporations. They're owed
And
the
because
profit.
it's privately owned by a corporation, they don't have to disclose what's going on
I
behind.
know, but who sold it to these corporations who
Exactly.
privately own it? That's
know,
the big issue. That's what
and-
the whistleblowers are about. Yeah.
It's hidden in plain sight too. That actually the U.S. Navy has the most amount of patents of reverse engineering technology.
Well, that belongs to the US. That belongs to the people of this country. That does not belong to individuals inside the
Well,
air.
that's what I think is happening, right? Like I feel that we're getting to a point where they can't deny it anymore. And what's going to happen when this technology has to be released to the public?
Well, they're going to deny it as long as they can. They're just going to stall and change or create a war or who knows what. But
Yeah.
we have to pin them down. We have to demand the truth.
I feel like that they could do that, but I really feel that we're almost there. Like that we're almost at a point where these individuals will be held accountable, and even the fact that the entrances to all these bases where they're doing experimentations on these beings and they have these crafts that's been now disclosed, right? This information is out there. There must be some people within political offices that actually want to go ahead and look at this and maybe stop some of these atrocities that are going on.
Well, that's why this whistleblower we just saw came forward. That's exactly right. He says that we've been involved in illegal activities, and I'm blowing the whistle on this. Yeah. He got in a lot of trouble by those people inside government who didn't want that to happen. Right. It's very complex. We're in the middle of a revolution, of an inside civil war with inside government, and this is why we have to support the whistleblowers and demand. Like someone has to come out and say, okay, lay it all out on the table, time for the truth. And the more we speak up, that's how the Vietnam War stopped, because there were people protesting this. We need to take to the streets or somewhere and protest this. So,
well, it's interesting because when it first came out, this last like a couple of weeks ago, they were started with the debrief, which is kind of mainstream, but not mainstream like CNN, MSNBC. And then all of a sudden other alternative, but almost teetering on the mainstream platforms started taking it on, like on YouTube, like big news agencies on YouTube. And they started saying and leading with the title that the US government is lying to us, right? That we're being lied to. So behind this whole thing is now, it doesn't seem like it's part of some drip agenda disclosure plan. It seems like those that are actually the ones that have held this technology from us, utilize our tax dollars for it, and also gained a lot of money from it, are now being called out as liars because they've held this information for so long.
Exactly. No, it's so deep though. It's like, yeah, that's a simple answer, but I think it's really, really convoluted, and we just have to have, like say, come clean.
Well, it's the biggest question of it all. I mean, it's got to do with our belief systems, our religion, our energy, right? The way we communicate with each other, and even our ancestry. Like, it's such a loaded phenomena that it will have an effect on shifting every part of the way we live.
Exactly. I mean, they're not filling up their gas tanks to get here is my favorite line. Yeah. And so that's really biology, technology, sociology. It affects us on all levels. And, I think, people in our field are at the cutting edge of pushing for truth. So that's sort of all I have to say for right now, Neil. It's up to you to take people home.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll take the baton.
Gotta leave now.
Thanks,
But
Alan.
thanks.
Yeah, that was exciting. That was so exciting. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It is exciting. We are in a moment in history. We are in exciting. Yes.
Right,
Yes.
right. Okay, I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks everybody for watching, and see you all soon.
All right, cool. And I'm going to keep going. So there is those documents that Alan showed, and then some more that I'm going to show here. There's just mind-blowing information out there, and as I said earlier, it's hidden in plain sight. It's not even that hard to find. You can look for it yourself online. I'll show you some resources of where you can do that. And another UFO crash retrieval document. It's kind of similar along the lines of what Alan was showing, but from 1954, there was even on the FBI's website. I'll show you exactly where you can go to find this and look at it. From 1954 in upstate New York, there was a team dispatched to what something had landed in this area in upstate New York, and they went there, and it's a fully intact UFO, right? Fully intact UFO, wasn't crash landed, just hanging out there. And when they went up to it, there were hieroglyphs that looked like hieroglyphs on the craft. And when they put their hand up to the hieroglyphs, it would change and morph into different shapes and different hieroglyphs. And this is on the FBI's website, right? So all this information is there, and it's really mind-blowing when you start diving deep into it. So we're going to start from this slide here, and this is what I wanted to go over today. We've been joined by the guest, Alan Steinfeld, so he's come and relayed his information. And I want to speak about the US Navy patents in just a moment of reverse engineered tech. Actually, I'm going to do that right now. So I'm not going to go deep into this, because if you really want to know more about it, you just go to our YouTube channel, and I'll show you right now where you can get this. This is some of the most incredible information that just shows you that this technology, they're not really trying to hide that much of it. You can do a simple search, you can look up these patent numbers, and you can see the technology they have. When Tom DeLonge came out with To the Stars Academy, and when he was, I'm just screen share here. When Tom DeLonge came out with To the Stars Academy, and he was talking about the fact that there are sightings, there's UAPs, UFOs in space, and then all of a sudden, a few months later, he came out on Joe Rogan's show and spoke about the fact that a lot of this technology is actually the government's technology or shadowy aspects of the government, and they already have this tech, and there's going to be a slow release of it all, and that he's going to be behind and responsible for releasing this information as time progresses, which is why they never really spoke about extraterrestrial lives and extraterrestrial bodies. At that point, they're just speaking about the technology. So these videos here, I just released 3 of them, 45 minutes each. Michael Salla, UFOs, anti-gravity, and patents on reverse engineered technology disclosed. Reverse engineered extraterrestrial tech by the US Navy. And we have mastered anti-gravity tech, and it's being used. Learn about the people, the patent numbers, how they got this technology, and all that information right there. And this is part of the information that's coming out right now, is like they've been using this technology for so long. What's going to happen when this technology is able to be utilized by the masses and the public? And then that, of course, goes into the whole question of, are we at the level of consciousness where we can utilize this technology in a conscious way? And maybe generally the whole world might not be at that level, but the fact is that this technology is being utilized to exert control and have this huge power struggle that includes not just money, but goes beyond money, really. Deep underlying power struggle that might be as old as time, that is going on with this technology, and the awareness that these individuals have that we've been visited, and what they're doing with the technology that they've got from these craft. And then the next part is the Antarctica disclosure. If you guys watched the press release with Stephen Greer that took place about a week ago, there was a few whistleblowers that came out, and I just mentioned a few minutes ago with Alan that there was a release of all the bases, well, a list of like 100+ bases around the U.S. where there are reverse engineering craft, where certain atrocities are happening, where people are being threatened, you know. And as some of these whistleblowers have spoke about, that people's lives have been threatened or even been taken away, and their families have been threatened because of this information, or stumbling across some classified information, or even stumbling across a UFO when they weren't supposed to be there, or something along those lines. So there was this one whistleblower that came out on this actual broadcast that Stephen Greer did from DC a week ago, and he started speaking about Antarctica. Many of you in this community have probably heard, you know, Gaia TV has had things on Antarctica. Linda Moulton Towles talked about Antarctica. There's been all these different people that have said that there supposedly is some sort of base down in Antarctica. There's something going on with ET craft. Even when it comes to Project Paperclip and the connection to the Nazis, and there is this whole understanding that many people have that the Nazis had a breakaway civilization that went down into Antarctica, and the story of Admiral Byrd, if you guys know about that, going down to Antarctica soon after World War II, and then being confronted by in this beautiful oasis-looking area with no ice, but green grass and a lavishly abundant area, that there were actually UFOs with Nazi symbols on it, right? And I'm not saying any of this stuff is real. I'm just telling you all the different stories. But what I'm really getting at with this is that we've heard a lot of information about Antarctica within this community of disclosure. Even shows, I don't know if you guys have watched Stargate, right? The show Stargate, which is one of the biggest disclosure shows ever put together. Watch that show and just look at it from the eyes of disclosure. They have this whole entire base down in Antarctica where they actually had a huge dogfight with UFOs in that show. And there's this base where they're basically able to track UFOs coming in and out of our solar system. And within that show, they were saying that these craft were actually ancient Egyptian gods that were bad, right? They had their own twist on it all. But even within there, you can see Antarctica being utilized in multiple Hollywood kind of productions disclosing information, right? So now with that all being said, take a look at what this whistleblower is saying about Antarctica. Let's make sure the audio is being shared here.
Hello, everybody. Ladies, gentlemen, members of the press. I'm very happy that you're giving me this attention and this information attention because it needs to get out to the world.
Contract.
I will start, since we have to be brief. I have already given all pertinent information and supporting documentation to the Senate Intelligence Committee and ARROW. They informed me that all of my information will be recorded for public record and shared with Congress. It is that important. In 2010, I was selected to go down to the South Pole Station in Antarctica for an entire year by Raytheon Polar Services as an employee of a third-party contractor for the National Science Foundation. I function in a dual-role capacity as a tradesman and a firefighter. My responsibilities required me to be more informed than most of my crew and offered me complete access to the facilities. What I learned from this unique experience needs to be shared with the entire world. The technology at the South Pole Station certainly can do what it is presented as its primary purposes, and unfortunately, much more. The IceCube neutrino detector is presented as a passive listening device for the purposes of the science as presented, but I'm going to skip right through the chase, folks. I have provided documentation that proves that the 5,160, what they call DOMs, that are embedded in the ice can actually transmit at 2,047 volts each. That gives us a long list of things to consider. It is effectively a multifaceted directed energy weapons platform that I will list rapidly a few things that it can do.
I'll just take a pause in between some of this and just mention things, right? So DEWs, directed energy weapons, you might have heard of this, and a lot of people within the community, some people said that even with the conspiracy theorists, were calling other people conspiracy theorists, saying that that's not the case, it's not happening. But he's saying there that there is an actual weapon system in the South Pole, in Antarctica, that has the ability of directing really high voltage of energy as a weapon.
Vehicle detection. We're learning that these off-world craft, on-world craft, ours or other nations, are also emitting neutrinos. So this makes the South Pole Station effectively an air traffic control station for this new level of equipment that nobody's discussing.
An air traffic control station for UFOs on-world and off-world.
In addition to the ability to detect neutrinos and the exotic vehicles, I have provided documentation that shows that this is also a system for faster than light communications. In the past, Gary McKinnon has hacked NASA, found the off-world fleet, the list of captains, and it's apparent that if we have faster than light vehicles moving throughout the system, we're going to need faster than light communication.
Hacked NASA, found the captains of an off-world fleet, secret space program.
This is that facility. Unfortunately, I have other bad news. The season that I was there, 2010 to 2011, we converted from construction to operations and maintenance in both the elevated station and the detector array. Unfortunately, when they first fired it up, that was when we had the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand. There was 2 incidental shots before they were able to target it correctly. This is an earthquake generating device as well. This is the weapons of war that we have to deal with now and what Raytheon's hiding.
They have weapons where they can create earthquakes around the world. And some people have told me in the past that that was not a real earthquake. And even I denied it. Like, I don't even know, maybe they don't have that weapon. But this guy is saying that they have this in the South Pole, in Antarctica, where they're able to actually make the ground shake.
There's an ELF system at the South Pole Station that when I arrived, I was told it was off, dismantled, and completely defunct. In my work, I will rapidly just tell you, I had to figure out the circuitry for certain other repairs, and I found that this system is in fact completely energized, up and running, and being utilized with the other systems for nefarious purposes as well. The Atmospheric Research Observatory is in what we call the clean air sector. I witnessed myself a very powerful green laser shooting out of the top of this facility into the cosmos. This, I believe, is a secondary form of long-range communications and or a defense system. I am not saying that we need to be scared of anything that's out there, but please understand the military-industrial complex is happy to invest all of your money in alleviating their fears. A question of power comes into play for all of these facilities that are present. I assure you, I knew what was going on, I knew the load demands of the facility, and all of these new items exceed the demand for the systems that I was presented. I am doing due diligence and research. I believe there is either a secondary power supply there that is either nuclear, that was there prior to the start of the Antarctic Treaty, which prohibits such things, and or that there is some sort of exotic power supply system there that just is not in the verbiage of the treaty, so it negates the responsibility to the parties involved. I think that pretty much covers it for time. If anybody wants to find out more, I have a website where all this information is at. For brevity, I'll wrap it up, but you can go to deciphering.tv. I've documented all of this stuff, and information is available.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm not going to think about that, but that's pretty profound, all that information there. I'd love to hear what some of you guys think. If you guys want to comment on it in Zoom or in the chat room, in a few moments, I'll take a look and read your comments. So let's get into some documents now. Here is just the first one is, I'm just gonna give you a list of documents that you can look up. If you wanna do the research, if you wanna share it, you know, 5-6 years ago, there was a lot of documents coming out. Some of them had been declassified since the late 1990s. However, they were not actually put online until around 5-6 years ago. So a lot of these documents were out, and you had to go to the National Archives in Washington, D.C., and you had to know the names of the codes, you need to know the keywords. So unless you're really in the program, as Clifford Stone has stated, unless you were in the program, you would not know what to look up. And then there was a Freedom of Information Act that requested them to actually digitize this and put it online. That was like 5-6 years ago, and even before, it was a series of digitizations of these documents. And then when I started looking them up, and we did a lot of videos with Grant Cameron back then, and he would be going deep into it. So we'd have him on Portal to Ascension like once a month even. A lot of these videos are still on our YouTube channel. And he would go into it because he was one of the only people really going through like everything with a fine tooth comb. And what I would do is I would actually download these documents and I would have them in my phone so that I could show them to people if this conversation ever came up, because this is a really important topic. And a lot of people just don't want to believe that something is going on, right? I was looking at the comments of some of these videos coming out, and most of these videos, most of the people watching them are just regular people. And the amount of disbelief in there, the amount of distrust in the government in general, that even if a whistleblower is coming out against what actually is happening in the government, people still won't believe it, right? So, and the thing is that a lot of people don't do their own research. They don't pull up these documents, look at it, see when it actually came out and type of technology they spoke of. So here, I'm going to just show you just a couple of pages of different things that you could look up before we go into some actual documents. If you want to look a little deeper, if you want to keep these files on your phone or show anybody. So the first one, and of course, one of the most well-known, is the Project Blue Book Special Report. And if you look at the Special Report number 14, so you can look up any of these. So you can type any of these up in a search engine and you'll find it. This is from 1955, a comprehensive analysis of the UFO sightings conducted by the US Air Force from 47 to 54. The CIA Memorandum, Flying Saucers, 1952, if you look that up, this memo discusses the need for scientific investigation. The NSA/CSS UFO collection. This collection includes various declassified documents from the National Security Agency and the Central Security Service related to UFO sightings and investigations. UK Ministry of Defense UFO files, look that one up. FBI's Vault UFO files, and I'll show you a print screen of that page in a second here. That was the one that had the 1954 case, and also I believe both of the cases that Alan just showed us. And the Canadian government as well. It's interesting to note that a lot of the Canadian government, the French government, Brazilian, Australian had all disclosed their files way before anything had happened in the US. And a lot of people saying that the US actually has a chokehold on disclosure. So even though these other countries had disclosed their files, not until the US started disclosing was there actually some movement in this. And we can all speculate as to why that is the reason. So the Canadian government UFO documents. Canadian government released several files related to UFO sightings investigations conducted by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The French Cometa report, right? And if you guys are from any of these countries and you want to look up your own actual files, then this is what you'll look up here. French Cometa report. The Cometa report is a declassified document from the French organization Cometa, composed of high-ranking military and scientific personnel. It discusses UFO sightings and concludes that some cases are likely of extraterrestrial origin. Brazilian Air Force UFO files. The Brazilian Air Force declassified a large number of files related to UFO sightings and investigations, providing detailed information on incidents in Brazil. And the Australian Department of Defense UFO files. Australian DoD released files relating to UFO sightings and investigations conducted by the Royal Australian Air Force. So those are some things that you can look up, go a little deeper. Okay, so now let's get into some actual documents here. We're going to start off with one of the most well-known cases, which is Roswell incident. And Alan showed a document. His first one was just a few days after Roswell. And I just wanted to show you this because I want to talk about how they actually even put documents out sometimes in order to sway us from the truth. In the same vault on the NSA's website, there's a document talking about Roswell and the crash and the findings, as well as a document talking about the opposite of what they found. So basically one saying that it was a UFO crash, flying saucer, this is the material that was found. And then another one saying after investigation of this whole thing, there was actually nothing there. So they're behind both stories in just one area. And, so that's how the manipulation works. And that's why it's also important to really use our discernment when it comes to this information, because documents can be created as well to mislead us, right? Here's the NSA's website. You can go ahead and just type in NSA UFO files, and it'll take you to this right here. And here's just some of what's listed. And I'm just going to read a couple of these off just to kind of show you what's found here. Department of State, subject, celestial body observed over Antarctica. Right, look at that one. Report of Air Force research regarding the Roswell incident. And the one that I'm going to show you in a second here, well, look at the top one. UFO as advanced technology. The second one, French government UFO study. Well, the NSA has the French government UFO files on their own website, right? And then now you see it, now you don't, talking about UFOs again. And the bottom there, I say, there's one that we're going to speak about now called The Key to the Extraterrestrial Message by H. Campaign. The Key to the Extraterrestrial Message. So here is that declassified document. And basically this individual, with the support of some sort of agency within the government, decided to go ahead and send a signal out to space. Okay, a signal out to space, attempting to communicate with ET life if it existed. And it's been a while since I looked at this article, so let me see if I can find the date here. So I'll read some of this because it's hard to read. Dr. Campaign presented a series of 29 messages from outer space and extraterrestrial intelligence, the NSA Technical Journal, and in the Special Mathematics and Engineering issue of the journal. The following article develops a key to these messages. So what are they talking about? Well, a signal was sent out into space, and guess what? They received a response, okay? So what this article is and what this code that they're attempting to crack is what is the code behind the message that they're getting, so they can decipher it into English and see what message that they're getting from whatever they're getting it from. And here we can see the actual code that was received, and also read some of this. Recently, a series of radio messages was heard coming from outer space. The transmissions was not continuous, but was cut by pauses into pieces, which could be taken as units for they're repeated over and over again. The pauses shown here are punctuation. The various combinations have been represented by letters of the alphabet, so the messages can be written down. Each message except the first is given here only once. The serial number of the message has been supplied for each reference, right? So they're saying they sent something to space, they received the message back, and right on their NSA's website is the actual code that was received from them. But what is not there is what they deciphered the message as, right? So they sent the signal, they received it back, they disclosed that on their website, but they don't actually say what the message was. And here is some more documents on the NSA's website. German scientist article on flying disc, light phenomena. And each of these folders have, just a few documents in there. You can really go deep. And that's how I found the 1954 UFO crash, was basically just scrolling down the FBI's Vault site, opening up a few that seemed interesting and just reading them. A couple of them actually have diagrams of UFOs with the actual symbols drawn on it as well. Typing in NSA UFO, you can see all these different websites and pages that will show up for you. And then CIA UFO. So you can type in NSA UFO, CIA UFO, and you're just going to be introduced to a lot of different content that you can go through. This one is very interesting because I believe it happened in 2021. It's not too long ago. And there was articles that came out that said there was a stunning admission. Pentagon admits it has been testing wreckage from UFO crashes. Okay, so this has been coming out dripping for a while, maybe not on the level that it is in the last couple of weeks, but it's been coming out. UFO crashes and findings may change our lives forever, experts say, right? So this specific one talks about UFO crashes and retrieval of exotic matter and metals in Las Vegas at Robert Bigelow's center there. And even when Tom DeLonge came out with To the Stars Academy, they were talking about some actual fragments were actually collected from UFOs and was actually stored in Vegas. And that's what Bigelow Aerospace is. So technically, it looks like, and as Alan was sharing, that these private corporations are reverse engineering this technology, making money from it, and who knows what else. And this one specifically was in Las Vegas. But one thing that really stuck out to me, there's the article. If you want to really type it into your browser, you can. But one thing that stuck out was multiple technologies, even the technology to slow down the speed of light, found in these UFO crashes. Okay. Very interesting. Now we're going to go from documents to some other anomalous information about space. And then I believe we're going to get into some documents again. As we're looking out into space, when we're looking at Venus or we're looking at Mars, are we seeing other types of anomalous occurrences that show that maybe that there was life there or that life exists there now, right? And when it comes to Mars, just in the last 10 years or so, we went from maybe there could have been life on Mars at one point to pretty much even the mainstream agencies admitting that from everything that we can tell, Mars used to have an atmosphere. We can see that there's river lakes and lake beds and riverbanks and everything all over the planet, that there was flowing water. And it seems like something occurred to Mars and a civilization got lost there, right? That's just from the mainstream. Not to mention, Richard Hoagland, who was actually part of the mainstream at one point, and other individuals saying that there's pyramids, that there's structures on Mars, right? The face of Mars. If we look into any of that information, it seems that there was an advanced civilization, that even the Sumerian texts talk about Mars being an outpost as a way station between Nibiru and Earth being utilized by the Anunnaki. So much information is out there. And, just to add one more, certain times of the satellites that we've sent up to Mars rotating around Mars and blacking out at specific points, including the first time that they did a passover on the face on Mars, makes people start becoming suspicious as to what are they hiding. So this one here was taken a few years ago, where there was a new rover sent to Mars a few years ago, and it was taking images of just the surroundings and the space. And this item, this anomaly was actually taped. Photos were taken off it by the rover, and at first they thought it could be a speck of dust, but the same photo, multiple photos were taken of that same area, and that object stayed in the same place even when the camera was moving. That kind of showed them that it was not actually dust, that there was some object in space. So just to show you one of the anomalies there. And the rocks on Mars suggest it used to look like Earth. And then also the images of Mars, right? The red planet. It's been proven at this point. You can just look into this because we have more advanced technology, that the red layer of Mars was actually a filter put on by NASA in order to make Mars look more dead. And now they've actually removed the filters from it, and you can actually see blue skies, and the atmosphere and the planet actually looks a little bit more habitable. So question is, was life there? Really, for sure. But also, what invested interest do they have to make us think that this is a barren, dead planet, right? What are they attempting to hide from us? Mars as well used to actually be in the Goldilocks zone. So if we look at the third dimensional reality, and in the 3D, my personal opinion is that you need to be within the Goldilocks zone for whatever planet you are, for whatever kind of genetic makeup you have, carbon-based or whatever, in order to be able to survive. Because in 3D, we're a victim to the elements. The sun, the heat, the oxygen, the nitrogen level, carbon, all of that right there affects us. So while we live in 3D, we need to be within a certain range of our sun or a certain positioning in order for us to live in a habitable way. But when we shift into higher dimensions, we then become the masters of our environment. The external reality doesn't affect us as much, where it maybe does on some level, but we're able to survive and live of other means rather than the conventional things that we need while we live in 3D. With that being said, it seems that Mars at this point is just beyond the Goldilocks zone, but there was a point for millions of years that Mars used to be in the similar vicinity as Earth. And we have now seen that Mars is actually moving away from the sun at 1.5 centimeters per year. So Earth, we will be out of our Goldilocks zone in 1.75 billion years, okay? So technically in the third dimension, we're able to host life for another 1.75 billion years on Earth before we shift out of the Goldilocks zone, and we either need to move off planet, or life can't exist anymore in the 3D, or what I feel is really going to happen is we shift into a higher octave, a higher vibration of existence, and we no longer are victims to the climate and the positioning of our planet. And then jumping over to Venus, there's also been anomalies on Venus. We spent so much time and energy looking at Mars. Is there any evidence that life could have existed on Venus? And within the spiritual ET information, we hear about the Hathors, the Venusians. A lot of individuals have said that Venus at one point did house life and actually might still today. There's even some esoteric scriptures and channelers that talk about Venus being a colony of the Pleiades before they actually came to Earth, and another tribe of humans came from Venus to Earth. Well, there was something that was actually found in the atmosphere of Venus. Firstly, in a specific point in Venus's atmosphere, it's actually around 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So you think of Venus as a really warm, hot planet, volcanic activity, because it's so close to the sun. But there's a position within the atmosphere that's around 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a great day here on Earth. And within this region, they found something called phosphine. Phosphine has been detected in Venus's atmosphere, raising the question whether this molecule might be a sign of life on the planet. On rocky planets, phosphine is only created two ways: through industrial means, meaning somebody is creating it and it's a waste product, or from the decay of organic matter. The only two ways that phosphine can actually be produced. So whichever way you look at it, it's a sign that something is going on there that is connected to organic matter and possibly life in that area. Well, the interesting part is that they actually discovered this decades ago, but at that point they weren't aware of what phosphine, how phosphine was actually produced. So not until they re-looked at the information within the last 5 to 10 years, and they looked at phosphine being produced there, and they kind of brought it back to the surface and started dissecting it a little more, did they realize, like, wait a second, we actually have an anomaly here. And that begs to question the question again, did they know this the whole time? And is this just part of the information of disclosing, saying like, oh, wait a second, we have actually, there is extraterrestrial life out there, we need to disclose it. Well, maybe not need to disclose it, maybe they feel like they're forced to disclose it, and we'll get to that maybe at the end of this presentation. But this was another anomaly that I thought was very interesting. And it says here right at the bottom, I'll read this. Phosphine is formed naturally via the anaerobic decay of phosphorus-containing organic matter. Phosphine is made industrially from white phosphorus by hydrolysis with alkali metal hydroxide. And so while conditions on the surface are hostile to life, the upper cloud deck is temperate. Now, since we're in space, we're going to go ahead and speak about Mars, the Mars project. And this project was actually a part of Project Stargate, which is Project Stargate, going now back into documents and declassified information, is probably to me the most wow and exciting piece of information that we've seen, because it not only discloses the fact that a lot of things were happening behind closed doors within the governments that we would not even imagine happening, but it also alludes to the reality of extraterrestrial life and extraterrestrial life actually on Mars. So this specific government project involved an attempt to remote view Mars, known as the Mars Exploration, Remote Viewing, and Experimentation Project. The Mars project was a part of a larger remote viewing programs conducted under the umbrella of Project Stargate. Under this project, remote viewers were tasked with attempting to gather information about Mars, its surface features, structures, and potential inhabitants through their psychic abilities. The goal was to explore and gain insights into the planet without physical presence or traditional scientific instruments. The remote viewers involved in the Mars project claimed to access information through their psychic perceptions, including remote viewing and other psychic techniques. They would then provide a detailed description, sketches, and impressions of their perceived experiences related to Mars. And here's just a little excerpt of the document. So within this document, and there is a subject, which is the person that's actually doing the remote viewing. And then there is an official from one of the 3-letter agencies that is actually the monitor of the remote viewing. And you can actually go to this document, find it online, and go through the whole transcript of the back and forth. And it's really mind-blowing. So here, I'm going to read some of it. Subject. I'm seeing, it's like a perception of a shadow people, very tall, thin. It's only a shadow. It's as if they were there and they're not there anymore. Go back to a period where they are there. A little pause here. So go to the bottom of this slide here, and you can see it says the planet Mars. So where the remote viewing, the planet Mars, time of interest, approximately 1 million years BCE. 1 million years BCE, okay? Go back to a period of time where they are there. It's like I get a lot of static on the line and everything. It's breaking up and all the time fragmentary pieces. I just keep seeing very large people. They appear thin and tall, but they're very large. Wearing some kind of strange clothes. Right, so they remote viewed Mars 1 million years ago, 1 million BC, a little over a million years ago. And as they're doing that, he's talking about the structures that are there, the beings, that they're very large beings and what they look like and what they're wearing. So this article here said, did the CIA really actually project to Mars in 1984? We asked the psychic spy, and according to the documents, their answer is yes. That's 2017, 7 years ago. So Project Stargate, just to talk to you a little bit more about what that exactly was. It was a top secret program conducted by various US intelligence agencies. primarily the CIA in the 1970s and 80s. Its primary focus was the research and investigation of psychic phenomena and the potential military and intelligence applications of such abilities. An offshoot of the earlier project, Scanate, so this is something that also a lot of people don't know, there was an earlier project called Scanate, and you can actually go ahead and look it up and look at those files, which aim to assess the viability of psychic phenomena for intelligence gathering purposes. The research expanded to include a range of psychic abilities, remote viewing, the ability to gather information about distant or unseen targets through extrasensory perception, also known as ESP. The program involved a team of psychics, military personnel, and scientists who conduct experiments and training sessions to develop and harness psychic abilities for intelligence purposes. Remote viewing sessions involve psychic attempts to see and describe remote location structures or events without physically being present. In 1995, Stargate was officially declassified, and the CIA released a significant amount of documentation related to the program. The declassified documents reveal some of the program's activities, findings, and extent of its involvement with intelligence agencies. It also says that it was closed down at a certain point. But what we have noticed is that a lot of these programs, when they become very successful, they don't close it down. They continue doing it with a special access program with black budget money. So those are the documents that I wanted to go over today. And now we're just jumping forward all the way to this moment here. And here's the paper trail, as I like to call it. Now, this is some of the disclosures that have occurred just in the last few years, ever since 2017, really. You can see that there's the constant release of this information. There hasn't been any huge declassified documents that weren't classified before. All those documents that I showed you and so much more, thousands of documents on these cases have been disclosed for the last decade. And as I said, some of them in the 1990s, right? Project Stargate was 95. Maybe it wasn't available online for us to research and look into, but it's been disclosed for quite some time. So it's just been a matter of time that it gets out to the general public, and then the general public actually says something about it. And now what we've seen since 2004 and onwards is actually more related to articles coming out, news agencies speaking about it, move from ridiculing this to actually accepting this as an actual phenomena. So I'm going to go over some of these here. The USS, so this is kind of like a timeline again, but more recent. The USS Nimitz UFO encounter, which was the main one that they're spreading all over the internet and still won't stop using, was in 2004. I'm not going to go with the description. You guys could kind of look into that a little more if you want to pause this at one point or even go and do your own research on it. The Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, also known as ATIP, which had a different name, and then ATIP was a name given to it. Whether that's the actual name or whether that was a name to kind of distract us and misdirect us, that's the question to be asked. In 2017, it was revealed that the U.S. Department of Defense had a program called ATIP dedicated to studying UFO encounters. Then we have the gimbal and the Go Fast footage, 2015-2014. These video clips also released in 2017 with the Nimitz one by To the Stars Academy and Tom DeLonge shows encounters between U.S. military and aircraft and UFOs. We have the FLIR 1 video, which was from 2004 as well, also released in 2017. And then we have UFOs, generals, pilots, and government officials go on the record in 2010. And this was by Leslie Keane, was actually the one that was behind this article in the New York Times article that released about these UFOs, who's actually also the reporter that was behind the debrief release with David Grush, right? So she's been tracking this for quite some time. Now, what I want to say about this is it's extremely interesting that I personally believe a lot of whistleblowers are saying that all of these UFO sightings that have come out and to release the fact that there is something anomalous out there are actually not extraterrestrial. These from what the research is saying, and even, Tom DeLonge was on Joe Rogan showing the craft that we see in some of these things, because those videos exist, are actually craft that has been reverse engineered from extraterrestrial technology. So it's one thing to say ours are not extraterrestrial, but then it's another thing so there's one thing to say it's extraterrestrial, one side. There's another thing to say that it's not extraterrestrial, it's actually ours. But then the truth is always somewhere in the middle. These are some sort of human made by some sort of government agency on the planet utilizing reverse engineered extraterrestrial technology. It's not extraterrestrial, it's not extraterrestrial, it's in between. It's craft that has been utilizing technology from the fact that we're not alone in the universe, from non-human intelligence, and have patented it and utilizing it for some sort of agenda, right? But it's so interesting that these drops, these videos were controlled narrative videos that were really not even based on extraterrestrial life, quite possibly, you know. These whistleblowers could be incorrect, I could be incorrect, but from what I'm seeing and from what I've been hearing, that these were actually not from ETs. But the UFO crashes that we're getting into now, that's a huge change, that's a huge shift. Now we're getting into these crashes, crash retrievals, and how they are reverse engineering and creating those craft. What do they have in that they're taking from in order to create this technology? And then the bigger question is, these extraterrestrial bodies found intact or deceased bodies or alive bodies in a communication with ETs, who are these people driving the vehicles? That is why I'm excited, because we went from reverse engineer tech to non-human intelligence craft being found to bodies and actual ET life, right? That's a huge jump from where we were 10 years ago. Senate, to continue here, the Senate Intelligence Committee briefings 2020. It was reported that the Senate Intelligence Committee received classified briefings on UFO sightings by the US Navy, okay? So it's interesting, again, the US Navy, you're gonna hear that a couple times here. The US Navy has the most amount of patents. There is some sort of secret space program that the US Navy is a part of. Michael Salla even speaks about this. And some people say that the US Air Force and the US Navy both have their offshoot secret space programs that both operate independently from another. And even in Stargate, the show Stargate, we have the Air Force and the Navy within that show that actually have their own secret space programs. The US Navy UFO reporting guidelines in 2019 came out. The US Navy introduced new guidelines for reporting encounters with UAPs following an increase in such incidents, right? How are we going to report it? How are we going to track it down? Because there's a threat out there, as they were saying. There's something going on. We need to find out, put our finger on what is exactly happening, because we need to protect our national security. US Intelligence Community UFO Report in 2021. The US Director of National Intelligence, DNI, was tasked with producing a report on UAPs, which was released to Congress in June 2021. This was the report that had so much information on there about these craft not being of ET origin and maybe being a foreign adversary, but really had no proof. And at the end of it, it said that there's actually no proof to suggest that it's a foreign adversary. And that was it. Then there's a whole classified section. So they broadcasted this on YouTube as well. And they continued broadcasting until they got to the part that was classified. The non-classified stuff was complete BS. Nothing really came out there. And then they said, okay, cut the broadcast. We're gonna now go over the classified documents. The report that was released to the public was based only on what was declassified, which is some of the stuff that we already went over, but really was the same old stuff about, well, we need to make sure it's not China, it's not Russia. You know, they were just going down that route and really focusing on trying to believe that it could be some sort of human craft and human anomalies and drones, rather than asking the bigger questions of what does this mean? Are we not alone in the universe? But then all of a sudden it went off the record, and who knows what they discussed then. And then we have US Congress involvement. In recent years, members of Congress such as Senator Harry Reid have expressed interest in UFO investigations and have called for increased transparency and funding for further research. You know, each of these things we can go deep into here, because even when we say funding for further research, there's a lot of people who believe that UFOs and all this information coming out there is a complete farce, has nothing to do with the fact that we have reverse engineered technology, has nothing to do with ET life, and they believe it's just a push from military and from DOD in order to create further funding, right? Which also could be because there's so much corruption and so much money going to black budget programs, and you know, and the corruption just runs really deep. However, I think it's a bit of everything. You know, there's definitely probably a push for funding, and there's money power grab when it comes to that. But then we're definitely being visited, right? And we have been probably since the beginning of time. And the evidence suggests, and the ancient scriptures suggest, that we were seeded by these beings. that we weren't just here visiting us from the beginning of time, that they actually came here and possibly had some sort of role in our evolution to the current species that we are, and quite possibly could just be observing us, observing humanity, waiting for us to get to a level where we can get over the amnesia and truly remember who we are and our connection to them. Public interest in media coverage. The subject of UFOs has now gained significant public interest in media coverage in recent years, leading to increased discussions like we're having now, and that a lot of different people, news stations, and government agencies are also having in this moment. So as we close out here, I just want to say that we're at a level on Earth where we're at a milestone that's going to occur no matter what. If you've ever looked at, I forget the name of the graph, but there's a graph that tracks the evolution of technology over the last 100 something years. And it's an exponential graph. It's a curved graph. It's not linear, it's curved, right? And at this point, if you can see my finger, we started out here curving a little bit, and now we're completely vertical, and we're vertically climbing when it comes to technology. And every couple of years that pass, technology increases to a level that we're able to process thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of different things at the same moment, and reach out and utilize technology to do things that we aren't able to do without standard human brain, because it will take us linearly a long time to do it. One of these things is AI, and that's a whole other conversation there, really. We're going to do some things on AI on PTA and have some discussions about it, because people are so split when it comes to AI. But it's been used for quite some time, but AI has now, like even Google's search engine has been using AI for quite some time. But AI at this point is now evolving to a whole new level. And beyond ChatGPT, beyond being able to create an image utilizing just keywords of anything that you want, right? It is now being implemented in reaching into space and deciphering information at a level that we couldn't do before to see if we're alone in the universe. And also dissecting and going into already received radio signals that we don't have the time, the abilities, the technology at one point to even look into to see if it has anything to connect to extraterrestrials at all. So I'm going to show you this right here, just to kind of show you that not only this technology that's going to be disclosed, the technology that's been used, reverse engineered technology that we've had, the fact that we had anti-gravity mastered in 1954, but then also our ability to utilize AI, or the ability of whoever's using it, in order to reach out into the cosmos to see if we're alone and to communicate with the stars, is taking humanity into a quantum leap, into an evolution that many of us aren't even aware or can't even fathom what's going to happen, right? And I don't make predictions, and I don't ever say years. I've been jaded. I've been hurt so many times by predictions that I don't do that, because like even 2012, like I was like waiting, when are we going to get over this craziness? When is this corruption going to end? You know, I wanted to know when there was going to be a solution to all this. I've shifted out of that. Realize now that it's more about the moment, the present moment, rather than waiting for something else. Realize now that the craziness, the corruption is actually working for us, not against us, right? And with that being said, I've just observing these things neutrally, observing the facts of what's going on right now. We're really at a milestone in human evolution, and a decision needs to be made, right? Well, decisions already been made. The decision's already been made. So what really needs to happen is the level of consciousness of humanity needs to match the decisions that's been made. There is going to be open contact. There are beings on this planet right now. The perception of our reality is going to shift very, very quickly. And the whole understanding is, are we ready for it? Because it's inevitable. We're existing in a universe that has so much life going on, there's so much occurrences, so many beings and interactions occurring. So I'm going to show you this video here, just to kind of show you some of the technological advancements that are being made in communicating with the stars.
Using the power of machine learning, SETI researchers have discovered 8 new possible alien radio signals hidden inside an old data set of radio observations. These signals came from 5 different stars, all within 90 light years of Earth. All of them were narrowband signals, which are rarely produced by natural sources. One of them came from a G-type star, just like our own sun. Another one mysteriously stopped and reappeared 3 days later. It remains to be seen what these signals truly entail, but this new machine learning approach could radically accelerate the search for alien intelligence, seeing what humans cannot. This breakthrough suggests that the question of are we alone may not be answered by us humans, but by our machines.
You know, and I showed you the article earlier that we already received messages from space, right? And a lot of them have been deciphered and information has not been released to us. There's also some crop circles. There was another signal sent out, binary signal sent out into space. Some of you might have heard of this crop circle that we sent out some information about, you know, in a binary form of who we are, what we look like, how many DNA strands we have, all that. And a crop circle appeared in response to that with where they are, where they're located in the solar system, what they look like, and how many strands they have in the DNA, a response to what we sent out. So we've been receiving signals. And now is the time for us to receive more. You know, the reason why, like I used to think that, well, why are we using radio signals? It's so outdated, right? Like if there's some advanced ET beings out there in space, why would we use radio signals to communicate with them? Why would we look for radio signals for them to communicate back? Well, the answer to that is that radio signals are one of the few signals and frequencies that actually can go through stars, go through planets, and go through rocks, and go through asteroids. So it's believed that if there is going to be an ET race communicating with us, they're going to utilize the frequency bandwidth, especially if they already know who we are and know how we communicate is one thing. But they can use the frequency in which that frequency can travel through space and go through multiple celestial bodies in order to reach Earth. So I thought that was just very interesting that in alignment with the AI revolution going on the planet, it's also being utilized in our communication to the stars, plus all the other things that we've been talking about in this series, the last one and today. So what does it look like? It looks like, to me, that we're on the brink of a whole new world. I used to get really excited about disclosure, right? And then I was jaded for quite some time, and I lost so much trust in the elite, the powers, the authorities. I lost so much trust in them. You know, I never really had full trust anyway, but I don't know, in the last 10 to 15 years or so, there's been a lot of more reasons in order to distrust the authorities, right? Those that say that they rule us, claim. And now this came out, and even when all this information came out, I was really skeptical on some level because I want to believe that something is going to happen, but I also know it's not going to come from the top down. But at the same time, there's so many people on the planet that unless it comes from the top down, unless it's told to them by the news agencies, unless it's told to them by their governments, they're not going to believe. You know, I've been speaking this information for quite some time to people that will never believe me because they just think I'm crazy, right? And the conspiracy theorists, especially my family. And now there's this validation, confirmation. The confirmation validation feels great, really does. And there is now an outlet for those individuals to go to get proof as well. Because when it comes to linear mind thinking, when it comes to being in this linear world, that this is what you see is what you get and all that stuff, facts and linear information, right, which includes facts, data, mathematics, including understanding the quantum world, is what can help appease the linear mind to make them start realizing there's something beyond what they have thought this world really was, right? Many of us, including a lot of you tuning in here, maybe once were linearly, or maybe you were just born into a world where you weren't that. You were the wayshowers, as they call them, the individuals that had broken through the linearity, that you came down here with a knowing and understanding. However, most of the world came down with a lesson to be able to have their reality shifted. They need someone to break them out of that illusion. And the facts and the data is doing that. And that's where we're at right now. So I feel that we're in the brink of a whole new world. That what we're about to see very, very soon might be actually some chaos in the beginning. But where we're going to end up, every ancient civilization has spoke about it, right? The ascension and evolution of consciousness. And as we evolve in consciousness, many of the systems that no longer serve us need to collapse, need to crumble. You know, we can hope and pray that it happens harmoniously, but some of these individuals that are in power and control of these systems may go out kicking and screaming, and a lot of them have been. So who knows how the transition is going to be. And ultimately, if you have this awareness of what is to come and your purpose in this world, maybe you have, maybe it's going to be a little bit better for you to see when these systems collapse, these institutions no longer work, that it's not because we're losing something, it's because we're gaining something new. We're gaining an ability to be able to connect with the planet and ourselves like we haven't been doing for so long. We've been living in a way that is so against what seems to be the natural flow of the universe and our planet. And ultimately, in order to have a post-disclosure world, we need to start learning how we're going to be the caretakers of this planet and how we're going to take care of ourselves, right? How we're going to live with love and compassion. So that's what, as the next one, this is a good segue for the next one, because that one is what we're going to talk about. Consciousness, compassion. What does spirituality have to do with the disclosure? Soon, I feel we're going to see hundreds of years of advancement within months, or possibly years. Well, hundreds of years of advancement is available to us now, but it's being held from us. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I'm going to end this presentation with the same slide that I ended the last one with, was that some whistleblowers have said that the memo got out that, we're landing in 2027. Let's go spiritual for a second. The quarantine has ended. The Yuga cycle of the Kali Yuga has ended. There's two different datings for this. There's on my Atlantean presentation, little plug for the conference we're doing in 2 weeks on Atlantis. You can look at portaltoascension.org and go to Unleash the Secrets of Atlantis. I'm going to be talking about the cycles of time and the end of quarantine in there, my presentation. And so there's two different datings, the 1700s as the ending of the Kali Yuga and the early 1900s. But no matter which one you look at, the Kali Yuga is over. The Kali Yuga was actually a representation of quarantine. Quarantine has ended. But when quarantine ended, meaning that there was a law of non-interference, right, from Star Trek, and that was taken from the esoteric world, the law of non-interference, that you can't interfere with an evolving species that's not ready to communicate with the stars. They need to reach out first, right? And especially if they're a warlike species, we're not trying to get involved with them. So the quarantine had ended. However, the beings weren't ready to communicate with us because of what was going on our planet. But it's changing. It's changing rapidly. 2027, some whistleblowers have said that they've made their announcement. Quarantine's over. It's about time for us to reconnect. I was thinking the other day, some people say that, why would they want to connect with us? Look how bad we are. Look how warlike we are. Why would they want to be here on Earth? And, and all those that kind of narrative. But when you look at it, out of the last, war on Earth is at the lowest that it's ever been for thousands of years. Death and poverty and hatred on Earth, even though there's a lot of hatred, is lower than it's been for thousands of years. The entire year, just think about Europe for the last 3,000-4,000 years. All the tribes were fighting, right? Killing, murdering, thousands of years. The whole of Europe, you're going to go to another country, they're not going to, there's definitely the political agendas going on, right? But you're going to go to another country, you can still live there, you can go there, you can move there, you can eat there, you can be. So to look at the way civilization is, look how we are, and why would anybody want to connect with us, or why would the ETs be interested in us? Look how bad we are. Is based on past trauma. We've been that, and that was also okay. They know it. We're lost in it. We have amnesia. They know the cycles of time. Many of these beings commend us for going down and getting lost and confused so that we can have the experience that we needed to have. But we portray and we put judgment on ourselves for our past experiences and the hatred, the pain, the war, the blood, all that stuff, right? And it's all good that we had that, because how are we going to learn how to be in the light unless we experience the darkness? And we've experienced the darkness. But now is the time for us to experience the light. We've done the work. We've not just this life. You might not think, I didn't do that much in this life from that darkness or that shadow self, but we've lived so many lives in that shadow. So going back to, I don't believe in dates. I don't believe in giving dates. But this is what I'm just saying based on the facts that are coming out there, that there is going to be a time where we're going to have a post-disclosure world. And is that coming upon us? And has the memo gone out? And now is there like a huge kind of battle going on behind the scenes on who and when, where and how the truth of extraterrestrial life is going to be disclosed, because it's happening. This really is happening. Okay. So that's it for this presentation, guys. Thank you all so much for connecting. I want to just check in with you guys. If you have anything you want to share, if you have any comments before we close out here in just a few minutes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Ron, for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and move over to YouTube and take a look. But yes, actually, I would love for you guys to say something and just give me some comments here. Tell me what you're feeling. All right, we got a good amount of comments here in YouTube. George said CE5 groups would be a good bait based on what Alan said earlier. And when Alan was saying that, I thought the same thing as well, that, well, a lot of those people have had contact, so that's probably why they have so many sightings there. Noam says, the head of Arrow is determined to find nothing. He has plainly stated his conclusion before he has even scratched the surface of the material he is investigating. He should resign. 100% agree with you. Vanessa, thank you. Always intriguing information. George, kind of like the Bentwalker's Metalship Forest craft with hieroglyphs, as well as Japan's Ustoro Boon craft. Haven't heard of the Japan's one, but George is talking about the craft, the hieroglyphs from the 1954 document. Roger says, never has he doubted ET and extraterrestrial dimensional life. Planets, stars, galaxies, globular clusters are all conscious beings. And Yoli says, yay, we could use a new world. We have never been alone in this earth or this universe. It's about time we awaken. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Levin in Glastonbury says, thank you, Neil. And Levin, we're going to be in Glastonbury. I don't know if you know this, but we have the Portal to Ascension Glastonbury Conference, August 11th, 12th, and 13th. And I think it will be a great thing for me just to end on showing you guys that. But Levin, I don't know, are you coming to Glastonbury? Because we're doing our huge Portal to Ascension Conference there. You are, oh, you're Isma. So funny. Isma is a speaker. That's so funny, Isma. Well, I'm going to see you there no matter what. All right. Okay, thank you, everybody in the room here. Thank you, Michael. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just show you guys a couple of things, and then we're going to close for today. But just to let you know one more time, 2 more days from now, I have JK Ultra from JK Ultra. She has a really huge TikTok following of like 500,000, and she also posts regularly on Instagram, and she just does some amazing videos deciphering and dissecting a lot of things. She's been reporting quite a lot. She actually got banned from TikTok for releasing information on Stephen Greer's, while she was actually broadcasting live Stephen Greer's disclosure conference. She got banned for misinformation on there as well. And so she's going to be joining me in 2 days on Friday, and maybe Alan will come too, because our topic on Friday is going to be consciousness. You know, I wanted to, like, the way I like to do it is like we gave a lot of information, a lot of facts, so you can't just deny the facts at this point, but it's really about now the next level of it all, because how are we going to be the caretakers of this new world unless we really do the inner work? And how do we communicate with these beings, and how do they communicate with us? Why are these beings spiritually connected, right? What does dimensions have to do with it? So all of that. Okay, so here is JK Ultra's page. And I think for fun, we should just play one of her videos real quick. Yeah, let's do this.
To alien disclosure. Today, NASA had its first public hearing about UFOs. And look, this isn't a post about whether you believe NASA. This is about I watched that horribly boring 4-hour meeting so that I could give you the highlights. So let's get into it. Now, I was keeping an ear open for the word biosignature, because if you remember my interview with Linda Moulton Howe, she said that was one of the possible stages of disclosure. Now, this scientist talks about biosignatures and technosignatures, but then this weird thing happened.
No evidence we're aware of suggesting an extraterrestrial source for UAPs. These existing NASA programs are relevant to the question of UAPs in at least 2 ways. Is it enough?
I swear they do shit like that on purpose. Finally, after how many hours, they finally mention aliens and then it glitches out. But like I said, very little about aliens was actually mentioned. Okay, so the reason.
All right, so that's just a little preview. So come on Friday to meet JK Ultra. Jumping over now. So if any of you are in the UK or in Europe, or not even in UK or Europe, and want to fly in for this conference, we just had the Portal to Ascension San Diego conference in April, and JK was actually there too, Linda Moulton Howe, and now we are doing Glastonbury, and this is truly going to be an incredible event. It's a grid working event in the disguise of a conference, and I'm just going to show you some of the speakers that are there. See if my internet can catch up to me. Around 14 of the speakers are from England or the UK. The other 14 are flying in from the US. So it's really a destination event. A lot of people are coming to contribute their energy to this experience. We have speakers such as Laura Eisenhower is joining us in Glastonbury. And if you haven't heard of Glastonbury, it actually used to be called Avalon, the ancient island of Avalon. And it was surrounded by water at one point. And the stories of King Arthur and King Arthur's kingdom are actually based on Avalon. And there is a place there, which the first place I actually met Isma in, called the King Arthur's Abbey. I think I might have butchered it, Isma. But over there, they actually have a grave of King Arthur and Guinevere. And this legend goes that that's actually where they were buried. So there's a lot of mystical information there. Plus, Cornwall, Glastonbury, Wales was the last stronghold of the Druids and the Celtic people. You know, the Celtic people and the Druids were throughout Europe, and they went even as far as Anatolia and Turkey. And then when the Romans came in and they invaded Gaul and they invaded the Celtic lands, many of them actually had to migrate and they went to England. And then at a later point, there was actually wars going on in England. And then the last Celtic kind of Druidic stronghold was that area, Glastonbury and all that. So they actually maintained the pagan roots quite a long time. And even when there was a conversion of into Christianity in that area, a lot of them still maintain the ancient rituals and practices. So you truly feel that energy in that area. With also, it's known as the heart chakra of the world. Like ley lines go through there, the dragon's line goes through there, the Michael line goes through there. So it's a really sacred space. And we're going to be there August 11th, 12th, and 13th. If you cannot attend live in person, please do show up to the live stream. We're going to be broadcasting it as well to an online audience, so you can check it out, ascensionglastonbury.com. Laura Eisenhower, Geraldine Orozco, Anton Parks, who is a French researcher on the ancient Sumerian scriptures, Vivian Chauvet, the ambassador from Arcturus, will be there. Magenta Pixie is going to be with us, Lori Wheeler, Lori Spagna, and of course, the images aren't showing, but the PTA crew, Alan Steinfeld, Joan of Angels, and myself will be there. And, you know, right now I'm in London. I actually moved into my new apartment yesterday. I'm in my new apartment in London, and we're setting up Portal to Ascension UK. We'll be doing an actual broadcast specifically on this because we have Portal to Ascension US, which is pretty established, but we're going to be setting up Portal to Ascension UK, and this is the first event for that. Then we're hoping and intending to have routine events and a huge presence for PTA. The intention is, as we travel the world, we're going to be traveling to all types of areas, staying there for like 6 months to a year, and setting up PTA headquarters, creating events there, having them continue. So this one is a celebration because it's like the first event here in the place that was born in England. So hope to see some of you show up, either there in person or come online. Lastly, but certainly not leastly, not this weekend, we have a webinar with Laura Eisenhower coming up next weekend. Tomorrow, I'm interviewing everybody on YouTube, everybody in the Zoom. Tomorrow on YouTube, I'm interviewing Laura Eisenhower. It's a live interview. We're going to be talking about this webinar and getting into some of her information. And then Unleashing the Secrets of Atlantis. We're going to be doing 2 free panel discussions in next week, exactly 1 week from today, June 28th, with some of these speakers. And we're going to be going deep into the secrets of Atlantis, awakening the children of Atlantis, awakening your memories. Atlantis, the good times, because there was a time where we fell from grace. We're going to be talking about the times that we were spiritually advanced, connected beings as well, talking about the times in Atlantis and what that information means for now. And it's a huge reverence to this ancient civilization, a huge reverence to it. And if you want to come and unlock some of your memories, unlock some of your abilities, and walk along the journey with us, you can go to our website, portaltoascension.org, and go to upcoming events there. Okay? Okay, deep breath in, guys. Thank you all so much. Appreciate you all for tuning in here. That is it for me. And we'll see you guys in a couple of days. Okay, so same time on Friday, JK Ultra, myself, and possibly Alan Steinfeld. Have a beautiful night, everybody.